Welcome back to Investing Talk Podcast.
Today we're focusing on MSCI and its upcoming earnings to watch.
This is definitely a big one. Before we get into what to look for, be sure to subscribe, like, and comment to support the show. And if there's a specific company you want us to look into, leave it in the comments below.
All right, so let's break down the key things we'll be watching for in this report. We are analyzing the company just ahead of its Q3 2025 results. Those are scheduled for October 28th. And, to understand where things stand now, we really have to look back 3 months. They set a pretty high bar.
That's right. They're definitely coming into this earnings call with some, significant momentum. If you look back at Q2, the results were really quite strong. The earnings per share came in above consensus. What was it? $4.17 versus the $4.12 estimate.
Beat estimates.
And critically, revenue growth was extremely healthy, almost 10% year over year.
Yeah, nearly 10%. That really demonstrates strong fundamental execution, right through the middle of the year.
Exactly.
And the market certainly noticed that momentum. We saw Evercore ISI, for instance, recently raise its price target quite a bit, pushed it up to $611, and importantly, kept that outperform rating.
Right.
When you get that kind of upgrade from a major analyst right before the next report, well, it suggests they think Q2 wasn't just a fluke. They're expecting continued strength.
Yeah, it tells you something about confidence, too, both internally and, institutionally. We saw those disclosures of insider buying execs putting their own cash in and big investors like Pittenger and Anderson upping their stakes. That happened right around September, October time. So you've got this dual signal, right? Management's confident and the so-called smart money seems committed to.
Yeah.
Suggests real conviction heading into Q4.
But maybe the biggest piece of news wasn't actually earnings. It was that strategic financing move back in August. The company priced a massive $1.25 billion senior unsecured notes offering.
Okay, let's unpack that for a second. $1.25 billion. That's huge. And unsecured means it's not backed by specific assets, right? Just their promise to pay based on their credit.
Exactly, based on their strong credit rating.
They got it at 5.250% interest, due 2035. So what's the market signal here? Why take on over $1 billion in debt like that?
Well, it signals pretty aggressive confidence, I'd say, and clear strategic intent. The fact that they specifically earmarked the money for debt repayments, stock buybacks, and crucially, potential acquisitions, it tells us they're likely looking at growth through M&A.
Ah, okay.
They basically secured a big, relatively cheap war chest to fund future expansion, whether that's new data, new tech, maybe geographic reach.
Gives them serious flexibility then.
It does. But it also ramps up the pressure, pressure on management to deploy that capital smartly. Maybe find a good M&A target that adds value quickly.
So that $1.25 billion really changes the narrative. It means this Q3 call isn't just about how did you do last quarter. It's much more about, okay, what are you going to do with all this money?
Precisely. Which brings us to the immediate focus, the Q3 results themselves, coming up October 28th. Analysts are really going to be looking at the resilience of revenue, especially across those three core business areas.
Yeah.
Data, analytics, and index licensing.
Right.
We need to see how those held up, particularly with, the market volatility we saw late summer, early fall.
Yeah, I'd argue the forward guidance might even overshadow the actual Q3 numbers this time. Given that huge bond deal, the market's going to be hanging on every word about deploying that capital. Are they leaning towards buybacks? Or are they maybe hinting at a big acquisition coming soon?
Guidance is absolutely crucial, yes.
Yeah.
But if we have to pick one operational metric that's likely to move the stock immediately after the release, it's got to be the index segment revenues. And within that segment, the real focus is on the year-over-year and sequential change in AUM-linked fees.
AUM-linked fees. Okay, for anyone maybe not familiar, can you just quickly explain why that specific metric is so critical for a company like MSCI?
Sure. AUM is assets under management. So these fees, essentially, MSCI gets paid a small slice based on the total amount of money invested in all those ETFs and passive funds that track their indexes.
Like the big global ones everyone follows.
Exactly. It's the definition of a high-margin, scalable, and very, very sticky recurring revenue stream.
Sticky meaning customers don't leave easily.
Right. The higher the AUM tracking their indexes grows, the more predictable and profitable that core business becomes. It's really their engine room.
And thinking historically, we know Q4 is usually pretty strong for index revenues, right? Because of the annual AUM resets at year end.
That's typically the case, yeah.
So whatever commentary they give now about the Q4 outlook, it kind of sets a very high bar for Wall Street.
It does. And this leads to an interesting nuance here, a degree of uncertainty. Despite the strong Q2, despite the big capital raise, the overall consensus outlook seems kind of neutral, maybe surprisingly so. And that's largely because we don't have a lot of fresh, verifiable, near-term consensus estimates for Q3 EPS or revenue from the big analyst firms. And technical data like implied volatility seems low.
Oh, wait. Why the neutrality then? If you've got momentum, upgrades, insider buying, where's the perceived risk that's keeping things level?
I think the risk lies in execution and maybe valuation. The stock already trades at a premium multiple, so that neutral outlook reflects the high bar they need to clear. If those index revenues disappoint even slightly,
Or if the commentary sounds slow on using that $1.25 billion.
exactly, the market might see it as a lack of immediate execution clarity.
Yeah.
And that can lead to a quick pullback in a high multiple stock like this. We're really relying on the company's own forecast commentary to fill that information gap.
Got it. So the market is basically saying, okay, we believe you can do it, but show us, prove it.
So looking beyond the October 28th report itself, what are the next catalysts or things we should keep an eye on, say, in November and December? Well, the first big event is probably what some call the passive shift, and that comes in early November. This relates to the major ETF rebalancing events tied to Msci's indexes.
When the big funds have to buy and sell to match the index changes.
Precisely. It's critical for tracking actual trading flows. When these massive funds adjust their holdings, it gives us a real-time pulse on demand shifts within that whole passive investment world.
Kind of like looking at the plumbing of the financial system. Okay. And then after that, mid-November, we get 13F season, the institutional holding reports.
Yep, the 13Fs. They give us that public quarter-end snapshot of how the big funds, hedge funds, mutual funds are positioned. We'll want to see if they bought into that Q2 strength in the bond issuance news. Did the big institutions significantly increase their positions?
Right. It's a key check on whether the sophisticated money is truly backing the long-term story. Now, moving beyond just the filings and numbers, the company's been active strategically too, haven't they? Pushing into new areas.
Oh, absolutely. Their strategic direction seems pretty clear in a few areas. For example, they launched that Msci Wealth Manager Analytics suite back in 2024.
Okay.
That signals a definite push towards serving the wealth management segment, which has, different needs, maybe less volatile than the big institutional asset managers.
And they seem really focused on customization, too. They held that virtual open house in September just on custom index solutions.
That's a great point. It tells you they're serious about creating bespoke products, which can really lock clients in tighter, makes them stickier.
Absolutely. And you can't ignore the whole ESG and climate angle, can you, with regulators getting more focused?
Definitely not. That increasing global regulatory focus on ESG, on climate reporting, it just reinforces how critical their climate and sustainability analytics are becoming. This isn't just some side business. It's really a core strategic growth area driven by, compliance needs around the world. It's almost non-discretionary spending for many firms now.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit to the maybe the more intriguing stuff, the speculative catalysts, the market rumors. You raise $1.25 billion in debt. Everyone's going to start thinking M&A.
They are.
Yeah.
The M&A speculation is definitely buzzing. The rumor mill suggests they're looking to deploy that cash towards accretive acquisitions deals that boost revenue or tech capabilities quickly. The most talked about targets seem to be in those high-growth areas. ESG data providers or maybe alternative data platforms.
Like private market data or real estate data, stuff that's hard to get.
Exactly. Companies offering unique data sets like that.
We're also hearing whispers, maybe persistent rumors, about new product innovation. Not necessarily buying something, but building something new internally, like new indexes maybe set for announcement before year-end, targeting hot themes like AI or private markets. How would that play out?
Oh, that would be a huge sentiment driver. It would instantly signal that they're agile, that they're responding to where investors are going thematically. If they can launch unique proprietary indexes capturing themes like AI, it just solidifies their pricing power and makes them even more indispensable for global passive products.
Right. Keeps them central. Okay, and what about leadership? It's usually low-key speculation, but succession planning is always in the background for big, stable companies.
Yeah, it's not an immediate worry. Management seems strong. But observers are quietly watching for any minor executive shifts, maybe formalized roles for up-and-coming senior VPs. It's not about an imminent change, but any internal move that clarifies the long-term leadership path would be seen positively. Shows good planning.
And finally, international growth. Any chatter there about grabbing more global market share?
There is significant industry talk, yeah. particularly around potential new partnerships or product initiatives in the Asia-Pacific region. After seeing strong engagement from global investors, the market's kind of listening for concrete steps to capture that growing international demand, especially in fast-growing Asian markets where institutional investing is still really developing.
Okay. Lots to watch them.
Definitely. So as we wrap up our look ahead of that October 28th report, really the two main things you need to focus on. First, that index segment revenue growth. It's the clearest signal of core business health. And second, the commentary around strategic capital allocation, what they plan to do with that $1.25 billion war chest. Those two factors, I think, will be the best indicators of whether MSCI can translate these recent financial moves into sustained execution and, potential outperformance as we look towards 2026.